Good morning. Is this on? We did that just to show you that we are two different people, because I sometimes still get asked to do electrical work from people thinking that I'm Nick. Just as we get into the word, I don't see these as separate parts of the service. I think there's a thread that's definitely running through everything that God's been saying this morning. And I just want to reiterate those words. I'm still in your hands. This is for all of us. You never failed me. And this is my confidence. And I felt like I had a word while I was preparing this over the last few days, that people in here who've had something stolen from them, time, relationships, money, physical things, I really believe that is our confidence, that He fulfills His promises and that He will restore to you many, many times over. So I want to start with that this morning. So one of my favorite things to do, apart from tennis and time with my family, is when Pastor John decides it's his turn to buy a coffee. They're special times. And I remember one of those times sitting with Pastor John in his office, and we were talking about Kingsway Church. You know, what is Kingsway Church? What's the purpose of Kingsway Church? And we came to the conclusion that a big part of this church is that it's a place of sanctuary. Yeah. And what I mean by that is that people come here from different places, from some pastors, some people not in ministry at all, but they come weary, they come exhausted, they come stressed out. And this is a place, this is a culture where it's safe to rest, to be restored, and to rebuild our relationship with God. I've seen it many times over, and if you're in the middle of that, rest assured that is the process God's taking you through. If you've been through it, give it as a testimonial to somebody else. See, in our lives, all of us, if we're honest, need those people around us to build us up when we've been knocked down. And I believe it's really important to say that at the start of this message, because this is about running the race. But I'm very, very aware that some people just aren't ready to run yet. They've been knocked down, they've been run over. But I want to encourage you, there's people here who will pick you up and get you ready to run again. See, there's this strange caricature of Christians that we find Christ, He saves us, and then everything's fine, everything's good, everything's easy. And I can tell from the giggles, it's really not true. And we've only got to look at the life of Christ to see what He went through on our behalf by choice, disrespected, hanging on the cross, beaten beyond people could not recognize who He was. And He did that out of choice, and He did that for us. But I believe the best things in life always come on the other side of great challenges. If you watch any film or any Disney film, me and Josh last night were watching one called Elemental. I don't know if you've seen that. Very strange film, Disney film. But when you watch all these films, you realize there's a story arc in all of them. Something's great, something happens that's a disaster, they work through it, and everything's great. In fact, everything's better at the end. People have learned, people have grown. And this is the story of the Bible. In James, it says, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. For when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love Him." So the rewards are huge for those who trust God and let Him take us through the process. In 2 Timothy, Paul the Apostle, he's sending a letter to Timothy, and he's doing it like an older brother to a younger brother, and he says to him, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, and I have kept the faith." Those are some of the Apostle Paul's final words. And it wasn't until I started preparing for this sermon I realized how many times running and racing is mentioned in the Bible. In Psalms 119 it says, "I run the path of your commands." In Corinthians it says, "Do you know that a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? So run in a way to get the prize." And Isaiah 40, which is one of my favorite verses, says, "Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary, and they will walk and not be faint. That's an incredible promise. And probably the most famous of all those, we'll bring the verse up on the screen. The verse we're going to spend a bit of time in now is Hebrews 12. And it says this. Yeah. This is such a good, I'm going to take a glass of water first. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Phenomenal passage. A few weeks ago, many of us here were at Farah's funeral, and it was both an incredibly sad time, but also a great time of celebration. For those of you that knew Farah, you'll know that she was a huge marathon runner. And I think I'm right in saying that in 1 year, she ran 21 marathons. It's amazing. I mean, some of us will never do that in 10 lifetimes. 21 marathons, which blows my mind. The thing about Farah, she took that mentality into all the parts of her life. She lived with great faith. She lived with perseverance. She lived with joy. And from what I've heard from people talking, because she would never say this about herself, but I know that she looked after people all the time, even though she was in great need herself. And at the funeral, it was amazing to see how many lives had been impacted by a life really, really well lived. So I want to go through this passage line by line and see what we can learn and apply. And I think it's really important that in this season, well, in any season, that as we read the Bible, that we start to really apply it to our lives. Because I've been thinking on our phones alone, we've got access to every single passage in the Bible. But I'm really aware that until we start actually applying it to our lives, it doesn't become manifest. So let's really apply what we're going to learn this morning. So it starts like this. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. And a quick Bible tip, and many of you will know this, that if it starts therefore, we're referencing everything that's just happened in the Bible, in the passage before. And Hebrews 11 is an incredible, incredible passage and talks about all the great men and women of faith and times of faith. Hebrews 11 talks about it's like a rapid fire account of the Old and New Testament. So it talks about the people who passed through the Red Sea by faith. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell. By faith, Noah built an ark and saved his family. And then it mentions Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Rahab, Gideon, David, Samuel, and all the great prophets. So imagine all those people now, all those great men and women of God in the Old Testament. And then read this again. We are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. These men and women who've gone before are the shoulders of giants that we stand on. Their baton has been passed generation by generation by generation. And in the same way here at Kingsway, we are given a baton to run forward with all the people who've been in this area praying for years and years to see the things that we're seeing right now. I had an amazing privilege a few weeks ago to go on the youth conference. Some of the guys are here. Some of them are out there. I had the best weekend. It was really, really good fun. The energy these kids have got is incredible. And I saw them people getting healed. There was words of prophecy. Kids were crying. Kids were in tears. Kids were speaking. They were teaching each other. Just amazing things happening in this weekend. Absolutely loved it. But I was reminded as I drove back that can only happen because of all the people who've gone before and done youth work here, youth work in the area, and sometimes probably slaved away for weeks and weeks with 1 or 2 kids in this church. So let's always be aware that there's people who've gone before, and it's our responsibility to run our race moving forward because they ran their race as well. And I really, really want to emphasize this morning because it's been a challenge of mine in the past There's no lone wolves in the kingdom of God. There's no lone people. There's no great heroes who run singly. We are in this together. It's really important to say that. So the enemy tries his hardest, I promise you, to divide and separate people out. So we must stick together and we must run together. The next verse says, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. See, if we're going to take that baton and hand it to the next people beyond us and run our race well, we need to lay down anything that's going to stop us and hinder us on that run. If you could put the next picture up, please. Let me tell you why this is on the screen. So 7 years ago, me and my brother decided we were going to do a half marathon. That's the most we could do. And for some reason, I'm not really sure why, but we went dressed as Flash Gordon, and I think that's Prince Voltan, the other guy. So my brother's 6'8". He decided, for some reason, I think to raise money, he'd create these great big wings, this helmet, and it must have weighed 2 stone on top of his already big figure. We had great fun that day, but as you can imagine, we didn't run well. We walked most of it, and we didn't get a lot of speed going. But after about 10 minutes, if you could put the next picture up, we passed this guy. So this guy had a fridge on his back, not empty, full of energy drinks, and people were taking them out the back, so it got lighter as he went along. But that's a heavy thing to carry on your back. And we found out afterwards he was doing it for charity, raising a lot of money, which was phenomenal. But who knows, he's never going to win that race with that on his back. And some of us this morning carry that around with us, that kind of fridge weight on our back. We carry disappointment, and we hold on to it. We carry unforgiveness, and we hold on to it. Some of us carry busyness, and we hold on to it. And all these things weigh up. And all these things are like a huge fridge on our back. And Hebrews says to us, just lay them down. However hard it is, lay them down. You see, it says everything that entangles us, and sin can entangle us, but good things as well can entangle us. You see, it's not a sin to have Netflix, but when Netflix owns you and you're on your 10th box set, it needs to be laid down. It's fine to go on social media. We put church stuff out on social media, but when you're scrolling through at 2 o'clock in the morning to look at what everybody else in the world is doing and taking your eyes off Jesus, it needs to be put down. It's fine to have money, it's fine to have things, until they start to define who you are. And I'm sure you know the story of the rich young ruler in Matthew 19. So this rich young ruler went up to Jesus, and he'd passed all the laws, he'd kept a good life, and he stood face to face with Jesus, which must have been an incredible thing, and said to him, what am I missing? What am I lacking? And Jesus, in only the way Jesus can, looked at him, obviously knew what he was thinking, knew his life, said, go and sell everything you own. And it's not a rule we live by to go and sell everything, but it's a condition of this guy's heart that Jesus could see. And I would just wonder this morning if Jesus could look directly into your eyes and directly into your heart, out of love, what would he ask you to put down this morning? What are you carrying that's just too much? What's burdening you that's just too much? At the end of this service, there's an opportunity to pray with people, and I just hope that people take the opportunity to come and pray with somebody and let them help you lay it down. See, we don't know from the Bible whether that guy went away, sold everything he had. It doesn't mention him again, but what it does say is he went away grieving. So we know that money had a hold on him that Jesus said, you've got to let it go. So it sounds quite a challenge this morning, but Jesus wants you free. And he wants you free from these things that you carry. And if the fridge metaphors helps, have a think when you get back home, what is your fridge? If you could put the passage back up again, please. It there says, run with perseverance the race marked out for you. There's a race marked out for you, marked out for you, marked out for you. We run it together, but it's your race. And your race is different to the person next to you. Your race is different to the person in front of you. But it's your race. And God empowers you to do it. He fills you with the Holy Spirit. What he doesn't do, which would be great, is, you know when you go on Google and you type in, here's where I am, here's where I need to go, and Google puts this nice little map out for you. It'd be great if God did that, but God doesn't do that. He shows you step by step how to run this race. I remember Pastor John saying a while ago that when he first came here, God gave him a vision of a multi-generational church. So sometimes God shows us, he gives us glimpses, but he doesn't show the path to get there, because you have to walk in faith to get to that point. We are now starting to see that multi-generational church come through. When you look around this morning, so many different ages, it's incredible. So what God showed Pastor John came to life. But the leaders have had to walk this step by step, faith by faith by faith. Joseph in the Old Testament was shown that he would be a ruler one day, but God never showed him that path to get there, through prison, through everything he went through. And I really want to say this morning, there's no shortcuts to where God wants to take you. We've got to run this race. But I guarantee you, as I said before, the best things in life come from not from taking shortcuts, but from taking this marathon journey. It was my birthday last weekend. Oh, 30 something. Bethany, my eldest daughter, she's 18 now, she took me out for breakfast. My mum was there as well. We had a phenomenal time, really lovely time. And Bethany absolutely spoiled me. She really did. I won't say too much because I'll end up crying, but she bought me a Wolves top. She bought me a tennis top, bought me a tennis hat. She paid for breakfast or some of it. But she'd really, really gone to town thinking through how could she look after me and bless me as a father. And I was totally blown away, absolutely, totally blown away. But when you flash back, there's been a lot of hard work to get to that point. I remember when she was 1 year old and we were walking backwards and forwards in the living room, holding Bethany because she could not sleep and would not sleep. I remember taking her to the hospital multiple times, once because she swallowed a 50p, and we had to have a metal detector on her stomach. I remember sitting in the bathroom for 5 hours steaming it out because she wasn't well. She's done a lot of crazy things, bless her. But I wouldn't swap any of those moments for anything, because the journey is important, and the results of all that hard work is just incredible. So God's saying to you this morning, run your race well. He's got plans for you that if he showed you now, I promise you'd be overwhelmed. I don't care how old you are, he has a plan for you. He has a race for you to run. But trust him step by step. So how do we run this race? We fix our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So fix your eyes on Jesus. The only race I've won, when I was reflecting on this, was the 100 metres dad's race at Westfield. Lydia had finished a sports day. They'd been throwing bee-bags around, and it was time for the dads to run. And I don't know what came over me, but I thought, I'm going to win this. And I lined up with 5 other dads. I had my trainers ready. I'd been prepping. And I sprinted like mad. And the reason I did was because some of Lydia's friends decided to go, Chris. And I thought, I can't let these kids down. So I ran like mad. I dived over the finishing line. I looked back and all the other dads were just trundling along. It's the only race I've won, very sad. But we're not called for sprinting. We are called for marathons. We're called for great, great things. We're called to fix our eyes on Jesus. There's a great story in the New Testament where the disciples are out on a boat. Jesus has been up the mountain, and he walks out to them on the water as Jesus does. And Peter can see him, and they get scared. They think it's a ghost. It's nighttime. It's dark. And Peter says to him, "If it's really you, tell me to come to you on the water." And Jesus looks back at him and just says, "Come." So Peter gets out the boat and walks on the water towards Jesus. And as he's looking into Jesus' eyes, he's doing the miraculous thing of walking on the water. But when he looks to the side and he sees the wind and the waves, he starts to sink and he cries out, "Lord, save me." And Jesus just literally reaches down, grabs his hand, and this sounds harsh, but I think he means it in a nice way. "You have little faith. Why did you doubt? Why did you doubt?" You see, when we look into the eyes of Jesus, we can do the miraculous, and he can do the miraculous through us. If James could come up a second, I'm just going to bring this to a close and a final thought. I think it's really essential that we keep our eyes on Jesus at this time. If you put the news on, you're going to see some crazy, crazy things. Crazy things. The enemy will try and distract you every single day. He's not on a time limit. He's got all the time in the world. But in all that loud noise and all those loud voices that come at us, let's make sure that we keep our eyes on Jesus and listen to the still, small voice that comes from him. Sometimes he yells like he did at James, but oftentimes he will just speak to you in a normal way and wait for you to turn away from all the things that you're looking at, that you're scared of, that are overwhelming, and just look into his eyes and say, "If that's you, Jesus, tell me to come." And he will say, "Come." He's the pioneer and perfecter of faith. He's been there before. None of us will ever go through what Jesus went through on the cross, but he did that for us. He was buried and he rose again 3 days later for us. And let's just remind ourselves this morning that Jesus did all the work. And he's asking us to follow him, to run our race, to trust him, and to have faith. It pleases God when you need God. It pleases me when my little boy needs me. It pleases God when we need him. So I'm just going to finish with this thought. You're surrounded by people here cheering you on. It's really important to know that. You're called to run a great race. Let's do it with perseverance, and let's keep our eyes firmly fixed on Jesus. Amen.